Hi everybody, it's Oksana. Today I want to talk to you about tools. Lots and lots of tools here for wire wrapping. Maybe you're new to wire wrapping and you're wondering, what tools should I get? What brands? Where do I get them? I thought that I would dedicate a video to this. So when I first started wire wrapping, I started with these little cuties here. This is the Bead Landing brand from either Michaels or AC Moore, I think Michaels. And it was a little kit of these 3 tools, which are the basic tools that you need: the round nose pliers, the regular pliers, and the wire cutters. And it was just like $9.99 or something. But then you know how Michaels and AC Moore always have those coupons that you can print out for like 40% off. So it was like $6, a really good deal. And I got all the tools I needed. These are not the best quality tools. They're not the easiest to hold and work with because they are tiny. I mean, they do fit in my hands and they're fine, but you know, if you're gonna do this long term and you're gonna be creating lots and lots of jewelry, then you probably want to get better tools in the long run. But if you don't really know if this is the hobby for you and you just want to try it out and see how it goes, you don't want to invest a lot of money into it in case you don't have the patience for it, or you don't like it, or don't have the time for it, then this is a good, really affordable alternative to getting started with wire wrapping, because you basically just need this little set of tools and wire to get started. And I am going to make a separate video on wire. So here is one option for you. Now, if either, you know, maybe you started with some tools like this and you want to upgrade, or you just don't want to start with these tools because you want something a little more comfortable, you just want something a little better quality, you don't mind paying a little bit more, then there's a few other brands here that I would like to recommend to you. So my favorite brand for pliers is Xuron. Hopefully you can read that. It starts with X, X-U-R-O-N, Xuron. And I'm sure you can find these lots of places, but I bought these on Amazon, and you probably can't see, but I'll read it for you. These are the tweezer nose pliers. And the awesome thing about these pliers versus some regular pliers here, these are actually the bent nose pliers, which honestly, whether they're bent and they're not bent hasn't really made a difference to me personally. I don't find that it's more useful for me. But regular pliers tend to be a lot thicker. And these are just teeny, teeny, tiny. They are so great for getting into tight, small places and just pinching in there. These are amazing, amazing, amazing. The only thing is this thing started like sliding off lately and I have to slide it back on. But they're extremely affordable. I think that they're like somewhere between $10 and $15. It might be like $14 or $13. And it varies too. But they were around that price when I bought them. So they're amazing. If you don't mind spending that much for your first set of pliers, then I recommend getting these to begin with, because they are awesome and I love them. These are my favorite pliers. Now before I got these, I did upgrade from my teeny little mini tools to these pliers. This is the Bead Landing brand again. These are probably about the same price, $10-15 or so at like an AC Moore or Michaels. So these are pretty good. If you can't purchase online for whatever reason and you can't get your hands on the Xuron ones, then really any of these larger size tools from Michaels or AC Moore, the full size, are going to be, you know, a little nicer and a little easier to use, and they fit in your hand better since they're not teeny tiny. But yeah, they are good pliers, so you definitely need to get yourself some pliers of some type if you're going to be wire wrapping, because you need them to bend your wire, you need them to pinch down that little weaving wire. After you're done weaving and you cut it, you got to pinch that down so it's not sticking up. So you definitely need pliers for that purpose. And then the other thing you need, so like that's the number 1 tool you need. Number 2 is round nose pliers. You definitely need round nose pliers. And I'm not saying number 1, number 2, like rating them which one you need the most. I mean, you need about 3 tools: the pliers, round nose pliers, and wire cutters. Those are the 3 tools that you need to get started, which is why I was numbering them. But these are the Xuron round nose pliers, which I don't necessarily recommend starting out with. They are, as you can see, they're only round right here, the tips, and then they get flat over here. So round nose pliers, what you need them for, and unfortunately I just have this tiny little scrap of wire here, but what you need round nose wires for is anytime you need to make any kind of like little curl or loop, that's what you need round nose pliers for. And I find them very useful. I pretty much can't do anything without them, because even if my design doesn't have things like this as a part of it, I'm still tucking wires away and like wrapping wires around other wires to connect things, and I'm still using round nose pliers to do that, even if my design doesn't have all kinds of little swirlies in it. So these, they can be useful because they're super, super fine. They're also pretty sharp. I once stabbed my finger with it, so be careful because of the very fine point. They're pretty sharp. But if you're wanting to make, like, I guess, like a teeny, teeny, tiny loop, maybe they can be helpful. I find that because they're so fine, they almost like pinch the wire, and the wire will get little dents in it. So I don't necessarily love these, but I wanted to show them to you because it's the same brand. But I think that these are a little easier to work with. Again, some kind of Michaels brand, beat along brand, really any brand that is just a full size like this. These are a little old, so you can see they don't spring back. What pliers will typically do is that you'll close them and then they spring back. There's some kind of mechanism. But because these are old and worn down, this little mechanism that springs them back kind of stopped doing that. But I mean, they're still usable. I've had them for a few years, that's why. But I can still use them, and I find them handy. They're a little thicker, which is nice. You can make bigger loops with them, and I personally find them easier to use. So all the ones that I have are, again, $10, $15 range. It's just up to you which ones you want to buy. So I find these to be a good choice. Next, let's talk about wire cutters. I honestly have not had any problems with wire cutters except for the very first ones I bought, and I wish I could remember. I don't remember what brand they were, but they broke one day when I was cutting the wire. Just like this piece just broke. So these are the Xuron ones. And they're nice. They work well. I'm happy with them. They kind of stopped springing back pretty quickly though. And these are unbranded ones from Michaels. I tried to find, they must be like a beat along kind of brand or something. I don't know. Sorry for the thunderstorm outside. I don't know if you can hear it. But they all pretty much wire cutters that I've used, even the tiny ones, have worked well. The tiny ones, I do find that you have to like press down extra hard. They're not as sharp. But if you get a decent full size, you know, for $15, you should be all good. Unless you're working with really, really hard wire. Like really thick gauges of wire. I'm talking about not your typical, you know, 20 or 18 gauge, but you're working more like 16, 14 gauges and thicker wire, or you're working with harder wire like stainless steel. This is going to be really hard for you to cut stainless steel with these, unless it's like 26 gauge of stainless steel. So for stainless steel, I use these. These I also got on Amazon. They are gloss titanium, and I mean, it really doesn't matter. I think they were closer to 20 bucks. They were a little more expensive, I think. I'm not like attached to these versus any other brand. These are the only ones I've ever used. I just basically looked up what wire cutters will cut stainless steel wire. So I got these kind of, you know, like ones that you'd find at a hardware store. Maybe you can just go to a hardware store. I'm sure they have a big selection of these sorts of things. So these work well. They do cut you know, harder, thicker wires. So if that's what you're going to work with, that's what you're looking for, keep in mind you probably want to get something like this. Now, pretty much all wire cutters, when they cut your wire, let me show you here. I don't know if you're going to be able to see the wire end, but when they cut your wire, they pinch the end. Basically, they pinch to cut it. Can you see how it's not completely flat? Like if you were to saw this off with like a little saw, it would be completely flat. Imagine that. And this is not completely flat. It like pinches it and forms like this little mountain, if you know what I mean. So I personally have never really had a problem with that because my wire ends are always like tucked away and you can't even see them. So it doesn't really matter what the tip of it looks like. No one's going to see it. But if for whatever reason you need it to be flat or it bothers you or whatever, you can file it down. This is a little file. I think I ordered it online, but I think they sell it because it's a Vintage brand and I've seen that brand in AC Moore for sure. So I think this was like less than $10, just a little file. So you can file down your wire end and make it flat. Now I think that maybe they do sell wire cutters that are like super special and they cut your wire so it's flat. I'm not sure. I've heard people talk about it, so I think such a thing exists, but I personally don't have any like that. I would assume they'd be expensive. All my tools are really, really budget, you guys. Even, you know, the nicer, more expensive ones are still like $15. So if you are wanting to hear about like fancy schmancy tools that are $50, you're not going to hear about them on this video. Just a heads up, I don't have any really expensive tools, nor have I ever owned them or even tried them. Now I'm going to talk about some optional tools. Tools that might be handy and you might think about getting eventually, but you don't need to start out with. This first one is, it says Bead Buddy on it. So these are loop making pliers. Again, Michael's or AC Moore is where I got them from. And they will help you make little round loops because when you make them on here, if you want to make two of the same exact one, unless you want to like mark it with a Sharpie, it's going to be hard for you to, you know, make same shapes in a row because it'll move up and down and you might make slightly different size loops with these. But if you want it to be the same exact one every time, maybe you're making a bracelet and you're making the little, you know, links for your bracelet or something and you just stick to one size, these will be helpful for that. You can make, I think they're also called bail making pliers. Maybe that's what they're called. But you can, you know, use them for your bail as well, to bend it around them. But you don't need this. This is something that you can use maybe your regular round nose pliers instead, or in the case of a bail, just find like a little pencil or something to bend your bail around. So you don't absolutely need these, but I have used them. They have been handy, so I'm glad that I ended up getting them. But for the first like year and a half of wire wrapping, I never owned these, so you definitely don't need them. And then something that I think is really, really handy are nylon pliers. And I have two. I have regular ones, and then I have round nose ones as well. And they are Nylon brand from Michael's. So these I've had for a long time. I got these almost right away, shortly after I started wire wrapping. They are so handy. I highly recommend them. They do not scratch up your wire, but what is more handy about them is if your wire gets just kind of bent and kinked, you just run it through these. It'll just slide on through because they're plastic and kind of smooth, and they'll straighten your wire, and it's going to be awesome. But with metal ones, you can't run your wire through metal ones. It's not going to run. They're just going to hold it in place. So they can be very useful for that. If you think you like working with enameled wire, coated wire, where it's, you know, copper on the inside and then, or aluminum on the inside, but then like colored on the outside, then you do want something like this. You want to be careful. You don't want to scratch off that colorful coating and reveal the copper underneath. So they can be really, really helpful. I haven't found the round nose to be as helpful as the regular ones, just because nylon is so slippery that making a little loop with these is really hard compared to making it with normal pliers. So I don't find myself reaching for these that much. I'd rather just use my normal ones and just be like really careful with it if I don't want to scratch my wire. I thought that I was going to use this for my trees, and you can use it for that if you're making tree of life pendants and then you want to curve your branches. I like to use round nose pliers to curve my branches and give them that wavy look. So for like silver plated wire or something, you don't want to curve your branches with regular ones because it'll scratch. These don't scratch, but honestly they're also so slippery that it's kind of hard to use them. So just want to throw it out there. You can get them, and I mean I have used them, but they're not the most easy to use useful thing. But that's for that. And then another kind of tool that might be helpful, might be neat to have, is this spring clamp. This is something you can get at a hardware store, and it basically is just a clamp. Now you can see all kinds of tape and stuff on mine, because what happens is after a while it rubs through all of this red, in my case plastic, and it's even, you can see it worn down through like all the tape and stuff I have on there as well. And then you get marks on your wires from these, just like little dents in there. So these are good for holding your wires. So say you have some base wires that you're weaving around, you can stick them in here, this grips them tight, and then you don't have to try to hold like 5 wires with your hand. They're just all held nicely. You can just hold this one tool and weave around them. It's useful if you have lots of wires and you want them all to, you know, be held evenly nicely. So probably something you want to consider getting. If you're just starting out and you're weaving around like 2 wires, probably not super useful to have these. But then if as you're progressing and you start doing like 3 wires and 4 base wires, then these could definitely come in handy. And the last thing that I want to mention is a hammer and iron block. So iron blocks are really, really heavy, and I got mine at Michael's, I think. You can get them online, but honestly it's not really cheaper because of how heavy they are. The shipping ends up being a lot, so it's easier just to get a coupon and buy them at Michael's. But basically you need the iron block to hammer on. You put your wire here and you hammer it, and then you need a special hammer called a chasing hammer. And you don't actually need a super special hammer. I started out doing it with just my regular hammer, like from my toolbox. But your regular hammer might, you know, leave little dents and nicks in your wire, little marks. Chasing hammer is supposed to be just like really smooth. As you can see, mine started chipping. Whatever coating is on here has been chipping off. But a chasing hammer helps keep your wire, you know, smoother when you're hammering it down. And then it has this nice little end in the back, which gives you really cool texture. If you hammer with this end, like a thicker wire, it's going to get those nice little dents in it and have that like rustic look. I don't know what that's called, but it's really pretty. So I forget how much this was, 10 bucks on eBay, I think. It's definitely like a cheap, low quality one, but it works. And if you want to try hammering, then you know, it's worth it, I think. It's a fun aspect of wire wrapping. So that's it, you guys. That's it about tools. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me below. But hopefully this is helpful if you're looking to get started and you're wondering about tools. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.